Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, in true fashion, I had to push record because we don't even call her by her name. She's prolific. She's amazing. She's a dreamer. You know what's interesting? I tell people I've done like 700 or 800 podcasts. I want to do a podcast called Behind the Podcast, where it's just us talking before and after, because those are almost more, you'll be on the phone with your mentor and you're like, oh, other people need to hear this. This is like a next level conversation, And, sometimes people get on. I don't think that's going to be this way. So it's interesting, right? You and I were talking about life and everything. And so why don't you, you do so much amazing stuff. Why don't you just tell them, what you do, who you are, and then we'll see where the conversation goes.
I am a prolific. No. That goes back to our behind the scenes conversation. I have been in the transformational leadership world pretty much my whole life. I've been a teacher, a coach, a mentor, transformational trainer, all of those things. And my early childhood, I feel like it's my childhood when I was in my 20s. I was one of the original founders of an organization called EST, which became Landmark Forum, which is the largest educational, personal education, transformational company in the world. And I started off being one of 5 of the executives, which we didn't even say we were executives. We were just 5 people, had an idea, let's do it. And our first seminar was 20 people. And our founder was Werner Erhard, one of the geniuses of the world in so many things. And I learned so much from him. And so for 10 years, I was senior vice president of EST. And we went from 20 people to millions of graduates worldwide. And I was in charge of marketing, PR, production, filling of events, promotion, training the trainers in how to sell, how to speak, all of those things. And so I learned on the road, really, with Werner and many other great mentors. And I had the privilege of having Buckminster Fuller, Peter Drucker, Warren Bennis, all of these great legends of business and management, Jerry Weintraub from Hollywood, to be my mentors, personal mentors that I learned from personally. And then I went out into the world after 10 years there, and I started my own businesses and did my own trainings. I first created I wanted to do something in business, Austin, because I thought, I've been training. I want a real product that you can sell, and you have to distribute and you have to package and put a price tag on it and all of that. So I became partners with Laurel Birch, one of the acclaimed great designers of the world. We created a fashion jewelry company. And she had started on the street selling one pair of earrings at a time that she had made. And everybody loved them so much, they wanted more and more and more. So we ended up having 3,500 wholesale clients, including Bloomingdale's and Smithsonian and boutiques and department stores. And we had an office and a workshop in Hong Kong, and we went to Beijing before China was even opened, and we manufactured our products there. They manufactured our designs before they did anybody else's designs. And we had offices in San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, and a gold foundry. And I learned real business. We imported silk from Japan. We got dyes from France. We got mummy beads on the black market from Africa. It was amazing. So then I did that little stint for many years, and she passed away, which was really sad. And then I went into my own training company and really focused on corporations and bringing the transformational kind of technology of how your mind works, how your emotions work, what real responsibility is, what mastery of communication is into corporations. Because everybody was doing public seminars, Tony Robbins was out there. I ran Tony Robbins' business for 2 years. They all came to me after I left EST because they all wanted me to run their business, right? And I work with Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul for many years and did many trainings on stages with him. And I've been on stage with most of the greats. They're all kind of, most of them, my students. And then I put together my own training company and went into corporations because I realized that the work of really how you be present, how you communicate well, how you have a relationship that's effective, how you make an impact and a contribution in the world, that it was all public seminars and kind of out of the human potential movement, which I was a pioneer and architect of that movement. And so I thought coming into business, it was actually an accident that I got into it, but I did get into it. And I've been working with senior executive teams, teaching them to have heart, to see, to be conscious, to be responsible, to be connected, to raise great teams and to produce championship results. And my clients include organizations and companies like Hard Rock Hotels International, Warner Brothers, Danone Yogurt, Evian Water, Capital One. And so that's who I am. That's what I've done. That's what I'm doing now. And you can find out all about me prolifically, blah, blah, blah.
I'm all in. I'm going to read it all. So I have a question, but my favorite quote in the entire world is 1934, George Bernard Shaw. The single greatest problem with communication is the illusion that it's taken place.
I love that.
It's my favorite one because that's everything, right? So this is a very poignant conversation that I have. We were pursuing 2 top-level CEOs. I interviewed them for almost 5 months. One was the best I've ever seen. And we actually declined, and I took the role because what these companies need that we're buying in a certain say they need, as my office manager said, they need heart. They need energy. They don't need somebody that's been in the space for 40 years that knows it and can just like, hey, this is what you should be doing. We're flipping around cultures of leadership and organization. And so I just have this direct kind of like force nature where like, we're just going to get the best out of everybody. And so for now, this is what it needs. But understand that this decision for me was made after working, a 15-hour day, hearing a song that my mentor sent me, driving in the middle of, it's 20 degrees, it's snowing, I'm exhausted going to the thing. And I'm thinking to myself, my soul is telling me that it's me, that this is where I need now. Now, here's where it gets tricky. By you making that decision, you're putting all the backs of the people that work for us and their families and their livelihoods, you're putting it on your shoulders. But as I told my team of owners, like, I want the rock. Like, give me the rock. Like, my whole career has led up to this moment. And I think, if you own it and you really embody it, then that is really all you need when it comes to, obviously you need to know business acumen and stuff like that. But I'm realizing that business per se is more about your belief in every day waking up and saying, like, let's go for it. Let's get it. And what you would think they would push against, right? People that have done it a certain way, they're actually begging for a new way to do it, even though they might not be able to say it out loud.
Well, I have an incredibly unique background in that most people start whatever they're going to do with their passion in their career because they've been doing something that isn't working, or they've been doing something that they were told they should do, or all of those things. And then they get to a point where they realize they are missing something and they're not sure what it is. And some crisis or realization turns them to the point where they actually take the path that they were destined to take. So what happened to me was different. By the time I was 17, was interning with an aunt who was actually a distant cousin, but we called her Aunt Gladys, who had been trained in metaphysics and healing arts and was practically a shaman.
Oh my God.
And, you know,
Mars, can we just stop the podcast? You're my favorite human I've ever met in my entire life. I've done this 700 times.
So much we have to do things together. I'm not kidding.
Dude, where's the next flight to Boca Raton? I'm there, dude. Let's go do it.
And so I trained with her, and she told me that my purpose in life was to spread love. And that I was love
and how old were you when you heard that?
When I first started with her, about 17, 18.
And when she said that, right? Because as a 17-year-old, you know, how did you distill it, right? Like,
well,
what does that
here's
mean?
The thing
right?
about me. When I was 12, I had an awakening when I read the book, what was it? Atlas Shrugged.
Oh my God.
Now, first of all, who reads Atlas Shrugged when they're 12, right? I don't even know how I got it, but all I remember is it changed my life. And I was like, Dagny Taggart, a person in the world, you can make a difference. You can do this, you know, Ayn Rand, but when I was 12, right?
Yeah.
So I know I've always been that kind of alien in my family and my school and my whatever, that somehow everybody just let me do whatever I said I was going to do and I wanted to do, because it always happened anyway, even if they resisted. And so I was the star of the theater in terms of any plays that we put on. I was, you know, I got voted to be the vice president of my sorority when I was a junior, and you weren't supposed to be able to do that unless you were a senior. And so I had all of these things that just kind of happened as a result of me being in touch with me, that part of us that is powerful and connected. And if you could harness and utilize that energy, and, you know, it was kind of a natural flow for me. So by the time that I had worked with my aunt, I learned how to heal. And, you know, here, I'll tell you a funny story. So AST in the beginning was a seminar, and we were enrolling people in seminars, and we'd had one seminar and there were 20 people. So Werner said, go out and enroll your friends. Well, I'd had such an amazing experience that I went out and enrolled the world. Why not, right? Anybody I talked to, anybody I saw. So what we would do is we would have what we called graduate seminars, and there would be a guest seminar attached. So as a graduate, you would come and learn from Werner a little bit more, and you would bring your guest, and they could be taken into the other room to have a guest seminar later, explain what the training was about, and enroll them. Well, our first graduate seminars and guest seminars were done in Werner's, one of his staff's apartments. On the floor in the living room would be the graduate seminar where we sat in a circle, and in the bedroom would be the guest seminar. So at an early time, I was leading guest seminars. I would go into the bedroom with the guests, 3 or 4, and they would sit on the bed and I would sit on the dresser and facilitate the guest seminar. And in the very beginning, Werner went around this circle of graduates and their guests, and he would say to the guests, how did you get here? This is how I got my job, pretty much, became senior vice president. The first guest said, oh, Marcia brought me. Well, how did you meet Marcia? Well, I was a bus driver. She got on my bus and I could not take my eyes off of her. She had so much light and I wanted whatever it was. And I just wanted to follow her anywhere. And then this other woman says, well, if Marcia brought me in, I met Marcia in the restroom of a restaurant and I had a headache. And so Marcia said, oh, no problem. I'll take care of your headache. And she put her hands on my head and she did something. And the next thing I knew, my headache was gone. And I looked at her and I just wanted whatever she had because she was so amazing. So I was like the Pied Piper, right?
Oh my God. And
so essentially Werner says, okay, you're in charge of communication and registration. You're in charge of enrollment, right? You're in charge of sales and marketing and filling the events. Well, I started off filling those little apartments, and then we went to hotels and we would have maybe 100 people. And then we went to bigger rooms in hotels and we would have 500. And then we went to, you know, convention centers and we would have 1,000 and 3,000 and like that. And then I ended up being responsible filling the Cow Palace in San Francisco, 20,000 people every few months, and the sports arena in Los Angeles, and the Honolulu International Center, and the Madison Square Garden, where we had, you know, 6,000, 5,000, 10,000. And that was my life for 10 years. And so I remember saying to people in the guest seminars, you know, you need to take us because, you know, it's the last quarter of an inch. you go through life and, you run into things and you say to yourself, but is that all there is? And there's something else, and that's what est is. And I realized one day I had no idea what I was talking about, because I'd never had an experience where I didn't have the last quarter of an inch. I was just so excited about this training. And so I kind of did it in reverse. So when I would have things that were obstacles in life and breakdowns, I'd already gotten to the place where I knew who I was. I already was connected. So it's not like the event was a different experience. I still felt trauma and loss, and I got divorced, and I lost money, and I did all of the things that people do, and I was sad, and I was glad, and I was everything, right? But there was something about how I approached it and experienced it, because of the fact that I'd found myself before. It wasn't I needed those events to find myself. I found myself and then had the events. I think it was kind of a training. Okay, let's test out and see how much she's found herself. Can she still be okay if this happens? And that's kind of been my tale. So here I am in Boca Raton, getting ready to my next adventure. I think I want to go back to Colorado. I really love Colorado.
What city?
I would like to be near Snowmass Village and Aspen. Maybe a little bit more down valley than that, maybe Basalt, but in that community.
I have an interesting question, right? So you create something, and over the years it takes off into what it is now, right? But there was 5 people. So regardless of what it's turned into now, when other people get involved and it gets bigger, it changes. When 5 people were sitting around coming up with that first class, like what was the vision? Like what was the mission? Like just sitting there, those 5 people, like why did you start it?
Well, first of all, how it started was Werner had the vision and the mission, and we were founding members. We weren't the founder.
Okay.
He was really the founder. Okay. And he had this amazing ability to communicate and to know who you were. And he'd had lots of training in lots of different disciplines, and it kind of came all of those disciplines together. And it was the purpose that we would, one training at a time, awaken and have people realize they were responsible, and that they weren't at the effect of their circumstances or their environment, that they could actually cause and create something. And so there was a purpose to the training, which was to transform the way in which you experience, so that the situations showing up, there were obstacles or fears or whatever, handled and cleared up just in the process of life itself. That there was something we would change or transform in the way you saw things, experienced things, that the flow would happen out of that rather than any resistance. However, this is the magic of it. There was an interior purpose of the staff, and we were very committed to this purpose. And I can tell you, I remember from my early, I knew this was what my destiny was at this point in my life, to add to this, because our purpose was to create a critical mass of consciousness so that a turning could take place. So if you think about it, in the beginning, we started in 1971, people were pretty unconscious. It was a pretty wild time. It was the beginning of the human potential movement. It was the flower children. I was a flower child out of San Francisco. Even my aunt told me I'm supposed to be about spreading love, right? And that people were yearning for that. And what our thought was like the ocean. In the ocean, when the tide turns, it starts at the bottom. And so you don't see that it's going the other way when it happens. It has to make its way up. So that's the critical mass, right? So to create a turning of consciousness is what we were about. We wanted a world that worked for everyone, and people who understood who they were and were whole and awakened. And we took it seriously. That was not just a job you went to and you came home.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I was on a quest, and it was for 10 years, 24/7, till 2 a.m, most nights, 7 days a week, starting around 7 or 8 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was a movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a catalyst for that movement. And it's amazing. So that was the beginning of who I am in terms of where I learned, and the mentors and the people that I was able to communicate to. Was an amazing opportunity because everybody did EST.
Mm-hmm.
Princes and paupers and politicians and scientists and actors and actresses. And, John Denver was one of my best friends, and he helped us do the Hunger Project. And we changed the whole way that people looked at whether hunger was possible to end. And we did breakthrough for the youth at risk. And there were just so many things. So that's the foundation on which I live. And from there, it's kind of like, okay, where should I be next?
Mm-hmm.
And at times I've got stuck, I've created things and I've got like, I want to stay, I want to do this. And the universe just kind of slaps me around and says, no, it's time to leave. It's time to get to the next thing. And I think that's what you do too, Austin. And I love that you're in an RV, because
I think you have something that that inspires me and people. I was doing a podcast this morning for a guy, and I was talking about how I think people are too stuck into like, this is it. Like, this is what I do. And my joke right now is like, if you and I, if we said we're going to start a dance studio in Atlanta, like, it's going to be the best dance studio. It doesn't matter. Like, I've gotten to a point with my mindset and the people around me where we're business agnostic. It doesn't really matter. Everybody's like, how'd you pick HVAC and plumbing? I'm like, I don't know. It kind of just fell in our lap and here we are. And like, they're so concerned because their identity is so caught into thing. And what I try to tell people is, you think like quitting drinking is the hard part? That's not the hard part. It's showing up and reforming your identity to the people that love you, and you're not the drunk anymore. And then staying true to that identity.
Very good.
And so for me, I see you as, you take your core values of what you care about in this world, and it moves through any position that exists. And it just so happens that the trappings of the business or the people you're doing it with change, but you don't change.
That's very good. I love that. And I have a story how I got into corporate work, because my whole work was about public seminars and workshops and training people in life coaching and things like that. And we actually started the coaching industry. There were no coaches. We did all the research on. I remember Werner saying, wait a minute, great sports teams have coaches. And even in the military, they have somebody that trains you, like you have to go to boot camp. Well, why don't individuals and corporations have coaches? We need to research into this and find out. And Thomas Leonard came with Werner, and they started the coaching industry. And like the rest is history, right? So it's just like it kind of opens up. But I left Est, and my boyfriend and I went around the world, and we had been together for 10 years. So we were really in love, and we were both senior executives, and he was a trainer at Est. And so we were bigger than life. You have to I had 5,000 people working for me in my division. Okay. I would walk down the streets of New York or San Francisco, and people would come up and ask me for my autograph. It was ridiculous because I was on so many stages, right? So when we left, we said, we need to create space for the people that we've trained to be able to do their job, because we know if we're here, they're just going to keep looking to us. So we went on this world 6-month trip around the world, and we ended up coming back through Honolulu. And there was a girl that I had trained for years in the guest seminar leaders training, how to sell, how to speak, etc. Elise Kraft. And we called her Kraft. And I loved this girl because she was crazy. Whenever I would do a seminar with her in Honolulu, we would get to go up on the mountain and look at the poop of the cows and, eat the mushrooms and get high. Or we would grab her Kahlua and her little Volkswagen, and we would take a trip out to the beach, and we would just chug that Kahlua all the way out of the bottle. And then we would bring our wasabi and our knives and our fishing poles, and we'd get in the boat, we go out, and we catch tuna, and we just hack it and just have sashimi right on the boat with our soy sauce and everything we brought. I mean, she was crazy. I loved her. Well, I call her when I get to Hawaii and I say, Kraft, let's get together for dinner. And she says, oh, great, that would be great. Well, why don't we can have dinner with my husband tonight. And I was like, oh, wow, you got married. And she goes, no, I've been married. I go, well, how long have you been married? And she goes, I don't know, 12 years, 15 years. And I go, Kraft, you never mentioned that. You never mentioned that you had a husband. Like, this is like usually something that one knows about their best friends, right? She says, yeah, nothing came up. So I said, okay, well, let's go to dinner. And she says, yeah, we can go to his hotel. And I said, his hotel? Yeah, he's the general manager of the Hyatt Regency in Waikiki. So I'm like, the same as you. I'm like, what? So we go. And because he's the general manager, now we know, well, we could have a party. I mean, why not? Right? So we invite 10 of our best friends, and we're all sitting there having dinner. And this waitress comes out, and she goes around and takes the orders of this table. And this girl does not have a single thing to write with or write on.
Are you,
right?
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah.
I was a high-end, I sold wine and worked at the nicest hotels in the country for 20 years. I never wrote anything down. I have a photographic memory. Yeah.
Oh, well, she must have too, because she went around and every single one of us would change our order, and then somebody else would change theirs. And then I'd say, oh, no, that's a good idea. I want that. And it was one of those, and nothing fazed her. And she goes out and she comes back, and the meal comes, and it was perfect except for one mistake. I only had 2 hors d'oeuvres. That's how rowdy we were. We were like, and I think I'll have that too. And I had ordered 3. So I was just being a smart ass. And I look across the table at the GM, Kraft's husband, Wayne, and I go, oh, Wayne, your team, I mean, like, they really have a lot to learn. You should hire me to train them in communication and leadership. I was making a joke.
Yeah,
I was giving her a real compliment. He said, you're hired. And that's how I started my corporate career. And I mean, like, there you go. It's flow, right? I'm telling you. Yeah.
Well, because ultimately what was happening in that moment is you weren't presenting an opportunity to anybody. You were just presenting yourself. And then the opportunity was then, I just had this conversation with the guy on the podcast. I'm not giving anybody a job. I just hired 10 people in the last 3 weeks. I'm not giving you a job. I'm giving you an opportunity.
Absolutely.
And you have to earn it every day. Well, what do you expect out of me? I don't expect anything. Well, I don't understand. I don't expect anything out of you. You're going to show up. You're going to do your job. If you continue to do it, you're going to continue to get paid more, and you're going to move up.
Yeah.
That's it. Nothing more, nothing less.
Right? Yeah.
And so that allows freedom for me to move and say, one of the things we talk about in our company is on to the next.
Oh, beautiful. I love it.
The business doesn't go through, or that employee doesn't want to come on. Well, that's gonna be rough for you. That's gonna be rough for you when you yeah, go ahead.
Well, what I love about what you're saying, on to the next, is, see, one of my values in one of my kind of missions when I go into a client is that they don't need me after a period of time. I think the biggest asset for people to learn is duplication. When I talk to people, I say, your job isn't to be head of marketing. Your job isn't to be head of sales. Your job is to duplicate yourself and create 10 of you. And while you're creating 10 of you, you're doing something, and it's called marketing and sales and everything, but you've got to create and duplicate yourself. And if you duplicate yourself, you won't be needed anymore, and you will automatically, the next opening will occur. And I think the universe looks for openings. Yes. And I think people and events and organizations are openings. And if they don't follow that opening and give and contribute the way that the universe expects them to do it, then that opening will close, and the universe will look for another person.
One of my favorite things is this guy said, you delegate your hands and then you delegate your mind.
Ooh.
And when you delegate your mind, that you're truly scaling, right? But with my clients. Most of them are real estate, high-end business guys. You know, they make a bunch of money. They think they chew on metal, you know, that whole game. And when they
Yeah.
get stuck, I make them read a book called Big Magic.
Ooh.
And so it's written by the lady who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. Okay.
Oh,
And
I
they're
love
like,
that book.
and right. And they're like, I don't understand why you're making me read this book. And I'm like, just read the book, shut up. And one of the things she talks about in the book that is the craziest thing I've ever heard. So you have this woman who is living in Minnesota who gets this book idea for a 1910 gold miner in a small town in Argentina that falls in love with a local lady. And it goes through this whole thing, right? So she gets the idea. She sits on it. She never writes it. She meets her mentor at an event in the West Coast, the woman that she's wanted to meet her entire life. The mentor comes and meets her and says, so can I tell you about this new book idea I got? And she goes, it's a 1910 gold farmer from this little town. She goes, she doesn't say anything. And she said she went home and she knew that she had to let it go, because if you don't use your art, it passes on to somebody else.
That's right.
And what you and I are teaching people, and being a CEO in business, is more art than it is business.
Totally. It's totally art. My kitty Riley wants to be a
No,
part
you're
of
fine.
every
It's
podcast
okay.
in the world.
Don't worry about it. You're so famous. The cats are famous too, so it's not a big deal.
She's
But I want to tell you the story, because I think of all
Okay.
the people I've ever met, you will respect this more than anything. And what people love about me is I have a crystal clear vision of like where I'm going. So people ask me, they say, what is your true goal in life? Like, what is, like, if Austin is like being honest, like what's his like true thing? And I tell everybody the same story, and I've told it a million times. So we're in Tuscany, Italy. I've got about 15 acres where I'm growing my own tomatoes. I don't drink anymore, but I make my own wine. I've got 2 little houses out there, and I'm cooking. So I used to be a chef. So I'm cooking for my Airbnb guests. You know, there are people from all over the world. We're hanging out, we're visiting, I'm showing local stuff. And so I have to walk down to the market to get food for that evening. And as I'm walking down the market, I'm 70 plus years old. As I'm walking down the market, somebody yells out from across the street, holy shit, that's Austin fucking Linney. And so he runs up to me and he goes, hey, you're Austin Linney, right? And I go, yeah. Hey man, I have no idea who you are. And he goes, no. I know you don't know me, but you coach so-and-so, and so-and-so changed my life. There you go. So thank you. And I just turned 40 like a month ago. And what I've realized is in my 20s, I wanted all the credit. I wanted the sex. I wanted the sizzle. I wanted the business that was like fun. And now I want none of the credit, none of the sizzle. I want to empower others up around me. And, you know, we're buying HVAC companies, but, you know, I'm going to love when that lonely tech that's 21 in 10 years is now running the company.
Yes.
And, you know, he's changed his life, his family tree. Like that's, you know, you and I get to do something that's really, it's, you know, it's transformational on so many ripple effects later. And I think those are the things that are not talked about enough, because, you know, Tony Robbins gets so much, but there's a million people that he's coaching, and it kind of just goes through, right? And like, you're still, I mean, I can tell you're just as excited about whatever business you're in now than probably when you started, you know, back in those apartments. And that's exciting.
True. Yeah, it is exciting. I'm going to be 76 this week.
76. I don't believe it. No way.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it?
You ever going to stop?
My photographer. What?
You ever going to stop or?
No, not stop training and teaching. And, you know, of course not. That's my life. That's my work. But, you know, I'm going to have other things that I wouldn't have had I, you know, been young. There are other things that are more exciting to me. But, you know, I went back to an EST event one time a few years ago, and I thought I could be anonymous. So, you know, I just had my little, put my name tag. I didn't tell anybody I was coming. There's about 5,000 people there, whatever. I thought I can hide. So I sit down, and I don't know if you've been to an EST event, but, you know, there's a stage up front, and then, you know, people are mingling and talking before the event starts. And this woman turns to me like all EST people do. Hi, how are you? What's your name? How are you? What do you do? Right. And I was trying to be anonymous, and I really didn't want to talk, but I was like, okay. She looks at my name tag and she goes, Marcia Martin. And in my head, I go, oh, no. And she goes, not the Marcia Martin. Are you Marcia? Marcia, is that Marcia? Are you Marcia Martin? Marcia Martin? And I'm like, ooh, this is not going to happen, is it? And then all of a sudden she screams across the room to her husband, George, come over here. It's Marcia Martin. I've been telling you about her for years. It's Marcia Martin. And so then all of a sudden I can hear the whispers in the room, Marcia Martin's here, Marcia Martin's here, blah, blah, blah. So of course I got called up to speak.
Yep.
I mean, what can they do? Like, I'm in the house, like, what are they going to say? Let's pretend she's not here. So I remember I saw this vision of what my life was, and I shared it that night, which was because of that. I'd gone through lots of experiences since I'd done all of that training in Est, where many people had trained me, just like you're saying, somebody that trained somebody that trained somebody, right? And I got this vision that what my life is really about is, you walk down to a lake and it's just so still, and you find one of those really flat rocks on the sand and you just flick it and it goes tick, 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 tick. And then you just keep walking. And I got this vision of walking around the lake to the other side where the rock comes tick, tick, ticking back to me. And I realized that my life is about training someone that trains someone that trains someone that trains someone that trains someone that eventually came back and contributed to me somehow. That it goes full circle. So I'm in total agreement with what you're doing. I want to play with you, actually. I want to, we got to talk.
No, I know. That's why I'm going to cut the interview short so I can talk to you. Sorry, guys. So if people want to, find out about what you're doing, your mission, how do they do that?
Go to my website, marciamartin.com, marciamartin.com. And I also have a subscription club where I've videoed my workshops and seminars and uploaded them to marciamartinclub.com that you can be a part of for $10 a month, real cheap. And it's amazing. People are calling in and saying, you saved my relationship. I doubled my profit, and it's my seminars and workshops on video. So it's kind of like Marcia Martin Netflix. It's great.
How could you go wrong? Guys, if you like this episode, send it to a friend, and we'll see you next time.